Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Facebook Live presentation for this week. Today, we're going to talk about evictions, foreclosures, utility shutoffs, sheriff sales, landlord-tenant court. And these are things that we want to go over because we want to keep you updated as best we can about these things. And all of them involve moratoriums that have been imposed in some cases by the federal government and generally by the state as well. And so Eric, did you want to start with utilities?
Sure. What I wanted to start, though, is to tell everybody is to show everybody that for the first time in 16 months of doing these, Jeff and I are wearing ties because we are recognizing that many of the COVID-19 restrictions are being set aside. And as and to allude to that, you can be reminded that we are here open for business, wearing ties and looking more and more like lawyers every day. Our offices are now unlocked and we are seeing people for appointments. However, if you'd prefer to see us from the safety and comfort of your home, that's perfectly fine. But Jeff and I are up and ready and seeing people now in person if that's more convenient for you. Whatever you want, we're here to help you. Okay? We can talk about utilities. My notes said landlord tenant, but I can start with utilities. Utilities are great because that's the easiest thing to understand.
Okay.
Before COVID,
should we talk about
yes,
things are ending? Coming?
Well, we should
Later
talk
on?
about everything, Jeff.
Okay.
And I think we'll start with utilities because that's
Okay.
easy. The government has been focused on the moratorium to keep services on electric, gas, and water. There's other utilities such as cable and telephone services that for educational purposes, they haven't been able to shut off the Wi-Fi and the internet at your home. But generally, they can, cable companies can shut off your cable, except under those situations and those type of utilities. But let's talk about water, electric, and gas. Electric and gas has been under a moratorium since COVID-19 under the Governor Murphy's special order of emergency, which he has renewed every 30 days. Last we checked, it's estimated that 62,000 or more people are materially behind with their electric and gas. And by people, that's wrong, households. 62,000 households in New Jersey are materially behind with their electric and gas and would ordinarily be subject to shutoff. The estimates as to how much money that's owed are it's actually in the millions of dollars. So as a result, right now, there have been no shutoffs, Jeff. But what is the governor saying about shutoffs for utilities?
Well, the governor is saying that.
I put you.
No, I know. Come the 30th of June of this year, that moratorium on utility shutoffs is over. And so that's 3 weeks from now, so 3.5 weeks. And the utility companies are required to give you some type of payment plan if you contact them. But the point is, just like it will be, or the main point, just like it will be in all these other things that we're talking about, is that this COVID thing is coming to an end. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And because things are opening up and people are getting shots and we don't have people getting the disease so much, we don't have people dying as much as we did before, the governor's loosened the restrictions. And so all these things that have been done for a moratorium on evictions. So if you're a landlord or a tenant, you don't have to pay your rent, but it's going to come due eventually. If you own a home and you have a mortgage, there's been a moratorium on what the mortgage companies can do. The governor has a moratorium on evictions. There's a moratorium on sheriff sales and utility shutoffs, like Eric was saying, and we're coming to the end. That's the big point. We're coming to the end. A lot of these things, the moratorium is supposed to be lifted at the end of June. But we'll talk about each one and what the date is. So Eric was talking about utilities, the the moratorium on utility shutoffs is supposed to end on the 30th of June. And that includes all utility shutoffs, even the ones for cable internet where you have children who need those services for school. Still, June 30th, they get shut off. And I believe that the utility companies are not supposed to be charging you a security deposit if you get your service turned back on. But the money that you owe them is going to have to be repaid somehow.
And one method and one theme that we will continue to talk to you about is if money is tight and you don't have $2,000 to give to Atlantic City Electric or Public Service Electric or gas
or 10,000
or 10,000 at Jersey City Power and Light. You know, the only time I ever saw a $10,000 utility bill, Jeff, was someone who didn't have car insurance and they knocked down a telephone pole while driving.
I think I remember that person.
And as a result, they were sued by one of the utility and they owed $10,000. Most part, we don't generally see
Not numbers that high.
not numbers that high, but regardless, if it's $2,000 and you don't have $2,000, it's a lot of money. And what we see when we talk to our clients is it's not the utility bill that puts them into bankruptcy, but it's all of the bills, including the utility bill. So what happens with the utility bill is in most bankruptcies, two things happen. Number one, there's an automatic stay that stops the utility from shutting you off. Moratorium, no moratorium, they can't shut you off while you're in bankruptcy. They give you a new account and you resume payments the next month. And the second thing is your goal is to get a discharge as to that debt and many of the other debts. And the discharge means you don't owe anyone any money. So no, we don't file bankruptcy for someone whose only bill is an $800 public service electric and gas bill. But we do file bankruptcy for many people who owe Jersey City Power $800 because that just cleans everything up. The key to a successful bankruptcy is to include all bills, clean everything up so you can get your fresh start. And Jeff, that does remind me of your book because that is one of the things that you feature in your book, Make Bankruptcy Work for You, is that you want to include all your bills. And you go through in this book how we can help you by including all the bills, how we can help you make sure you get all your bills to us. You get a fresh start. If you call the number that's going to be flashed up on that screen right now and ask, look at that, that's pretty good production quality, huh? You ask for a copy of this book. It'll be Miranda or Joe right now, maybe Robert, who'll be picking up the phone. Ask for Miranda, tell her you want a book. We'll get you a book, and it's really worth it. There's no obligation. There's no charge for the book. And it's chock full. Can I do this with the screen?
Sure.
It's real. There's substance to this book. So, Jeff, that's the utility situation. It can be included in a bankruptcy, even if you owe for chopping down a telephone pole. Most of our clients, all of our clients who do Chapter 7, we get rid of the bill completely. Chapter 13, we may be able to get rid of the bill completely. It'll be discharged. But we'll keep your service on. And that's to come home and not be able to turn on the lights when it gets, it's not so bad in the summer, I guess, but not to be able to have the air conditioning on, that can be bad in the summer. But Jeff, there's more it's all evolving, isn't it?
Yes.
When the moratorium started as a result of COVID, everything was stopped. But now, as Jeff explained earlier, it's evolving, it's moving forward. That's why we're wearing ties again to work. And one of the things, what do you want to talk about next? Maybe the landlord situation or sheriff sales and
we can talk about evictions if you like.
Let's talk about that.
And before I get into that, we're bankruptcy attorneys, and this is a bankruptcy firm. And like Eric said, we've got our ties on because we're getting ready to start going back to court, perhaps, seeing clients more often in person, although we're happy to talk to you from your home, using the computer if you'd like. And all these things where utilities weren't paid, rent wasn't paid, the mortgage wasn't paid, whatever, it wasn't forgiven. You still owe that money. And bad things can happen if it's not paid. And again, bankruptcy may be for you, it may not be for you. It's not necessarily a panacea, but if you're behind on stuff, it would be a good thing to check into anyway. To call us, we'll talk to you for free. We'll go over your financial situation, and maybe bankruptcy is the right thing for you to do, because for some things we can have a payment plan. For a mortgage, we could have a payment plan if the mortgage company won't do something for you. To repay the arrears, to resume making your normal payment. Same thing for a landlord-tenant situation. If you're behind with your rent, we can do the same thing. For utilities, like Eric was saying, we can probably eliminate whatever you owe on your utility bills, and you just start off fresh.
Like a new account.
Yeah, a new account, and whatever service you use after the bankruptcy is filed, you'd have to pay for. So with this stuff coming to an end and the moratoriums coming to an end, it's a good idea to call us or call a bankruptcy attorney to see if this would be appropriate for you. Because like Eric intimated, if you're behind on utilities, there might be a number of other things that you're behind on. And I think a lot of people that we talk to have kind of been hanging on for a little more than a year, and they don't have money set aside for whatever. And they have problems with more than just utilities.
Right.
So evictions. The latest word that we have from the governor, and this is the governor, the federal government has done the same thing, but we don't even need to pay attention to the federal government's moratorium on evictions, because the state moratorium is more comprehensive and longer. And that's what we have to focus on. So right now, that's due to end on the 13th of August. The moratorium on evictions, started by the governor, is supposed to end on the 13th of August. Now, he might extend it a little bit more, or he may not, but as with all these things. But I wouldn't expect any significant adjournments on the end of the moratoriums. They're going to come to an end soon.
And what you've emphasized, Jeff, is so right. You have to pay rent if you want to stay there. There's no landlord that we know of that's going to say, well, you've had a tough time these past 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, so you don't have to pay your rent, just start over again. No. If you're behind with your rent due to the governor's orders, you haven't been evicted, period. The debt hasn't been forgiven. So you have two choices in the bankruptcy setting, and we're bankruptcy attorneys. You have two choices. Number one, you file a bankruptcy to stop the eviction. You move out and you don't owe anyone any money, a fresh start, and that's a Chapter 7. Or number two, you file bankruptcy, you resume payments next month to your landlord, and you make a new payment to a trustee on the back payments. That's a Chapter 13. If you are behind with your rent, filing bankruptcy is really a great option. You can try to go to landlord-tenant court. You can try to negotiate with your landlord. There's all sorts of things. But we found it's very successful. Now for the numbers, Jeff. According to this article I read, through April 2021, seems awfully high, 593,000 people are behind with their rent. That can't be right. That must be
I think it was 62,000.
62. I think I might have put the comma in the wrong place.
Yeah, I think in April of last year, April of 2020, there were 40,000 eviction actions pending, and the governor's orders just froze those. And now, as we sit here, there are about 62,000 that have been filed. That includes the ones that were filed before. Landlords haven't been filing them because they can't go anywhere with them. There's no landlord-tenant court, according to the Supreme Court, but we expect that to change very shortly, probably in the middle of August. And so how many actions can be filed right now? It's going to be a big number. If we've got 62,000 out there that have been filed, and we do in New Jersey, how many more are ready to be filed?
I flipped the numbers, okay? The article I read had 593,000 households behind with utilities in New Jersey, okay? Now that can be exaggerated because if you're 1 month behind, you might just typically always be 1 month behind. but they counted 593,000 families behind with utilities. Over $570 million in utility payments have not been made. And then my numbers match Jeff. There's over 62,000 landlord-tenant complaints. And what Jeff emphasized here is landlords haven't been hiring their lawyers to file these complaints because they can't go anywhere. So why have they been paying their lawyer to file these complaints? They're just sitting on them. Once this moratorium is over, the landlord-tenant courts in New Jersey, we predict, based on our experience, we've been doing this for 35 years, there's going to be an inundated landlord-tenant court situation in New Jersey. And I don't know how they're going to expedite them. They're going to look at every case and decide whether you should be evicted if you haven't paid your rent. And if you don't have a good plan to catch up, file bankruptcy. It'll stop the eviction. And you can call that number. And once again, I'm going to Jeff's book again. There's an entire chapter on landlord-tenant here. And you can just take a look at it and read it. And it's free. And I forget what chapter number it is, but it's right in there. It's probably about 15 or so. Take a look, ask for the book, read about landlord-tenant and bankruptcy and how it will help you. But if you're behind with your rent, you have to do something.
You have to. Yep. If you want to stay there, you certainly do. If you're going to move on, you're going to have a large debt that you owe that you need to get rid of somehow. So bankruptcy, like Eric said, can take care of either of those situations. So we're talking about evictions just a little bit more. If evictions can still happen in New Jersey for commercial tenants, or if the landlord feels that there's some type of emergency involved, there's special paperwork the landlord has to fill out if he thinks there's an emergency, and the court decides whether there is or isn't. But generally, evictions can't take place until the 13th of August, which is not too far away, a little over 2 months. Should we talk about?
I think we can do. You want to do some people who are behind with their mortgage, how we can help them?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the next thing would be foreclosures, and for the foreclosure situation, as this COVID business has gone on, has been difficult to figure out exactly what it is, because Fannie Mae's doing something, Freddie Mac's doing something, FHA's doing something. What about the VA? What about the USDA? So there are a couple different things going on, but I can go through this very quickly. If you have a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, as of the 30th of June, their moratorium on foreclosures is lifted. So those types of loans can proceed with a foreclosure on the 30th of June. FHA, same thing, no foreclosures until the 30th of June. That's the end of the moratorium on FHA foreclosures. Now, in New Jersey, we have not only government-backed loans, just like most states, but we have loans that are not insured by the government. And about 30% of the loans are not insured by the government. There's never been a moratorium on them proceeding with the foreclosure. They just haven't wanted to, because we can't have sheriff sales right now.
Right.
And they don't want their attorneys to have to be paying their attorneys to get the sheriff sale adjourned every month until it can really happen, I guess. That's what we've been told by our colleagues is the reason that they haven't gone ahead with foreclosure actions. So the message is, by the end of June, all mortgages in New Jersey can do foreclosures unless they change the date.
What does that mean? Well, in New Jersey, the foreclosure process is a legal process. You're served with a summons and complaint. And if there's one, and it's different than other states where it's not necessarily legal as far as going through the law, going through lawyers and summons and complaint, but it is in New Jersey. And that's a point of emphasis that Jeff and I have made during the course of these Facebook Live presentations. If you are served with a summons and complaint, you must call a lawyer. The mortgage company's hiring a lawyer, you need to hire a lawyer. And it's something worth speaking to us about, because if it's gotten to the point that the mortgage company's hired a lawyer to do a summons and complaint, You need to stop it. Again, it's just like landlord tenant. There's two ways through the bankruptcy process we can stop it. Number one is the simpler way, the Chapter 7. You've decided you just can't afford the house. You don't want the house. There's no equity in the house. You want to move. But you want to make sure you don't owe the mortgage company any more money. You typically, we can't say that until we speak to you, but in many cases, you would then qualify for a Chapter 7. We would stop the sheriff's sale to allow you, stop the foreclosure, stop the sheriff's sale to allow you a longer opportunity to live in the house. Then you'd move out and not owe anybody any more money. The second avenue is you want to keep the house. You've fallen behind. It's understandable as a result of COVID. It's understandable as a result of what's happened to our economy. You've fallen behind. You want to keep the house. We file a Chapter 13. In a Chapter 13, typically, and again, it's a case-by-case basis. We'll speak to you. We'll take our time. We'll take your time. We'll figure this out. Typically, you'd resume regular monthly payments directly to the mortgage company and make a new payment to the trustee over 5 years to catch up with the mortgage. And the law is designed in those Chapter 13 cases to treat the credit cards and the medical bills and all that stuff differently so that you can afford to pay your mortgage and afford to pay the trustee over that 5-year period. Does it work? Jeff, does it work?
Absolutely.
We save houses for people all
the time. Yep.
It's remarkable, really. People come into this office. I tried to get a saying, like you come in crying, you walk out smiling. I don't know if that's a great slogan, but, and it may not literally be true all the time, but people, you feel relief after you speak to us about these situations. These are serious stuff.
Yeah.
You're losing your house. Your lights are being shut off. And then we didn't even talk about people that have wage garnishments and all these things are happening. It's tough. And we can offer you some solutions.
That's right. Absolutely. A couple things that we haven't really talked about. Well, I talked about evictions a little bit. Sheriff sales. Right now, we don't know. We're assuming that it's going to be the middle of August would be the end of the moratorium on sheriff sales. We've talked to the sheriff's offices. They're conducting sheriff sales for commercial properties or properties that are vacant. They're allowed to do that, but not for residential mortgages right now. But we think that that's going to be over with in the middle of August. And the evictions, we talked about when the deadline was, when the moratorium was going to end for evictions on the 13th of August.
Right.
So
again, if you received the summons and complaint in foreclosure or eviction, call us. If you're behind with your rent or behind with your mortgage, call us. It's a free telephone consultation. We can help you from the safety and comfort of your home. You can come in to see us and minimally start by asking for a copy of Jeff's book. It's very, very helpful. Much better. This is, they say I look the best on Facebook right now, Jeff.
So I think that's about it for this afternoon. Hope we
well.
gave you some good information. This stuff is hard to figure out. We get on the computer and try to find the latest thing that the governor put out, the latest thing that's come out from the federal government. It's not always easy to figure out, but we try to do that and let you know what we found. So we'll resume next week at 2:00. We'll have another Facebook Live episode then. And until then, stay safe and God bless.